Johnson sighed as she gazed at the Christmas lights filling the streets of Boston through her car window. The road to her childhood home always stirred up complicated emotions. This Christmas, the entire family was planning to gather for the first time in 3 years. "Mom, how much longer until we get to Grandma's house?" Tyler's voice came from the back seat. The 9-year-old boy's eyes were shining with excitement and anticipation. Dressed in a blue down jacket, Tyler was playing with a handheld game console on his lap while looking at the snowy landscape through the window. "About 15 more minutes, Tyler. Let's wrap up that game soon. I want you to be ready to greet Grandma properly when we arrive." Melissa smiled at her son through the rearview mirror. People often said Tyler's face resembled her ex-husband Richard, but his gentle personality took after her. Since their divorce 3 years ago, Richard had taken his responsibilities as a father seriously, spending every weekend with Tyler. Though their relationship had ended, they maintained a respectful connection for Tyler's sake. "Do you think I'll really get a PlayStation 5? Tyler's voice held both hope and uncertainty. Melissa chose her words carefully. "Tyler, I've told you before that Santa brings nice presents to good children. But you never know what's inside until you open it." In reality, Melissa couldn't afford to buy Tyler a PlayStation 5. Her job at a large insurance company was stable, but as a single mother, juggling rent, food, school fees, and extracurricular activities wasn't easy. She had consulted with her mother Eleanor about this year's Christmas presents, but the response had been vague. "What do you think Brandon will get from Santa?" Tyler asked. Brandon was the son of Melissa's sister Carol and a year older than Tyler. "That's a surprise too," Melissa answered, though inwardly her anxiety grew. Eleanor had maintained an elegant and active lifestyle even after losing her husband. The problem was that she blatantly favored Carol's son Brandon. Tyler was always treated as second best, and Melissa had been pained by her mother's discriminatory attitude since childhood. During a recent phone call with Eleanor, she had said, "I've prepared a special surprise for Brandon. Carol helped me with it." When Melissa heard this, anxiety flashed through her heart. Eleanor continued, "Don't worry, I'm thinking of something for Tyler too," but her tone lacked conviction. As the car entered the upscale Beacon Hill neighborhood, Melissa's tension mounted. Her mother's house was a beautiful 3-story brownstone that had once been the setting for her and Carol's happy childhood. Now as an adult, this house evoked complicated emotions for Melissa. "Wow, amazing!" Tyler exclaimed. The boy's eyes sparkled at the sight of the lit-up Christmas tree in front of the house and the dazzling decorations on the front porch. Melissa parked the car and took a deep breath. "Well, shall we go?" As the two headed toward the entrance, the door opened and Eleanor appeared. There was something ageless about her elegant figure. Her perfectly styled white hair and expensive-looking cashmere sweater told of her social status. "Melissa, Tyler. You finally made it." Eleanor greeted them. She gave Melissa's cheek a quick kiss and lightly patted Tyler's head. The gesture lacked warmth. "Hello, Mom," Melissa attempted to embrace her mother, but Eleanor had already started walking toward the entrance hall. "Carol and Michael are already here. Brandon has been looking forward to seeing you," Eleanor said. "This Christmas is special. It's been years since we've all been together." Melissa put her arm lightly around Tyler's shoulders and smiled at him. "Ready? Let's go see your aunt, uncle, and Brandon." Tyler nodded, but there was a hint of anxiety in his eyes. Melissa could read her son's feelings. In past Christmases, Tyler had always been overshadowed by Brandon and rarely received Eleanor's attention. When they entered the living room, Carol, her husband Michael, and 10-year-old Brandon were seated there. Carol's demeanor was always that of the successful sister. Michael had done well in real estate, and they owned a luxurious home in the suburbs. "Melissa. Tyler." Carol stood up and embraced her sister. The strong scent of her perfume stung Melissa's nose. You finally made it. Brandon, say hello to your cousin. Brandon stood up with a sullen face. He was a head taller than Tyler and dressed in the latest fashion. Hey, he said coldly to Tyler. Hello, Brandon, Tyler replied in a small voice. Eleanor returned to the room and pulled Brandon close. Brandon, Grandma baked some special cookies. They're in the kitchen, take Tyler with you. Brandon nodded reluctantly and beckoned to Tyler. As the two boys left the room, Eleanor sat on the sofa and said to Melissa, Brandon won first prize in his school's math contest last week. Carol is really nurturing his talents. Melissa maintained her smile as she replied, that's wonderful. Tyler won an award at the science fair last month. Well, that's nice, Eleanor said indifferently, changing the subject to the new car Carol's husband Michael had recently purchased. As Melissa sat on the sofa, she wondered if she could maintain her composure throughout Christmas. Her mother's favoritism had become more blatant over the years, and it pained her to think about its effect on Tyler. Still, she was determined to keep smiling for her son's sake. This Christmas had to be special. Despite her mother's attitude, she wanted to create happy Christmas memories for Tyler. Carol and Michael's luxurious two-story home was adorned with Christmas decorations. The hallway from the entrance to the living room was decorated with gold and silver ornaments, and the air was filled with the aroma of cinnamon, pine, and baked goods. In the living room, a massive Christmas tree stood by the window, reaching almost to the ceiling. Warm light emanated from multiple strings of LED lights, and crystal ornaments sparkled. Under the tree were piles of presents in colorful wrapping. Seeing this, a look of anticipation appeared on Tyler's face. Mom, are all those presents? He asked Melissa in a hushed voice. Before Melissa could answer, Eleanor appeared beside them and placed her hand on Tyler's shoulder. Most of them are for Brandon. Carol's friends brought him lots of presents. Eleanor gently stroked her grandson's head and continued, but there might be something for you too. Tyler's expectant expression clouded momentarily, but he quickly composed himself. Melissa pulled her son close and whispered in his ear, Santa hasn't forgotten about you, I'm sure. The dining table was covered with lavish Christmas dinner fare. Centered around a roast turkey were mashed potatoes, gravy sauce, cranberry sauce, and various roasted vegetables. The table was set with silver cutlery and fine china. Everyone, please be seated, Eleanor announced. Brandon, you sit next to Grandma. Once seated, Michael began pouring wine. He filled Melissa's glass with a friendly smile and said, It must be tough raising a child alone. Is Richard's child support adequate? Melissa maintained her smile and replied, We're managing fine. Richard is cooperative. But he remarried, didn't he? Carol interjected. Does he have time to look after Tyler with his new family keeping him busy? He spends every weekend with Tyler, Melissa said quietly. Feeling her son listening from across the table, she tried to change the subject. The turkey looks delicious. Carol, another wonderful dinner this year. However, Eleanor ignored the shift. Tyler, I heard something happened at school last week. Your teacher called. Tyler looked at his grandmother with surprise. Melissa frowned. Mom, what are you talking about? Richard told me, Eleanor responded calmly. Tyler can't concentrate in class. He needs a more disciplined upbringing. Melissa took a sharp breath. Indeed, Tyler had performed poorly on a math test last week, and his teacher had called. She had informed Richard, but wasn't sure how Eleanor had found out. It's a minor issue, Mom, Melissa said in a composed voice. I've already addressed it. Tyler is studying with his teacher after school, and he'll do better on the next test. Brandon is always excellent, Carol said proudly. His teachers praise him constantly. Really? Michael said jokingly. From what I've heard, there were some issues during physical education class. Michael. Carol reprimanded her husband. Just kidding, Michael laughed. Brandon is our family genius, excelling at everything. Throughout the meal, the conversation revolved around Brandon's grades and extracurricular activities, and Michael and Carol's recent luxury resort vacation. Melissa occasionally nodded and smiled, continuing her meal calmly. Tyler ate quietly, occasionally casting anxious glances at his mother. As dinner was coming to an end, Eleanor moved closer to Melissa and whispered, "I'm worried about Tyler's future with your parenting. Being a single mother is hard enough, but you should discipline him more." Melissa hid her distress and responded gently, "Tyler is a wonderful child, Mom. He's growing at his own pace." "Well, do as you wish," Eleanor sighed. "By the way, I've prepared something special for Tyler this Christmas. You'll be surprised." Those words deepened Melissa's anxiety. There was something ominous in Eleanor's mention of a special present. However, she didn't want to create conflict during the family's Christmas Eve gathering. She simply smiled and said, "Thank you, Mom." When dessert was served, Brandon exclaimed excitedly, "What about the presents? Can we open them now?" After dinner, Carol calmed her son. "There's a special surprise, so be patient a little longer." Tyler looked up at Melissa. "Do I have a surprise too?" Melissa gently stroked her son's hair. "Christmas is always full of surprises. It's time for presents," Eleanor announced in a high-pitched voice. The family, having finished their apple pie and ice cream dessert, began gathering in the living room. Under the enormous Christmas tree, colorful presents seemed to shine. Tyler's eyes gleamed with expectation. For weeks, he had been talking about the PlayStation 5. Many of his friends already had one, and Tyler had tried it at an arcade. He was completely captivated by the rich graphics and immersive gameplay. First, for Brandon, Eleanor smiled, picking up the largest box and handing it to her great-grandson. "This is a special present from Grandma." Brandon excitedly took the box and immediately tore off the wrapping paper. "Wow! A PS5, he shouted, holding up the box. "Amazing! It comes with 2 controllers. And 5 games." Carol and Michael applauded, with Carol saying, "Santa knows what a good boy Brandon has been." Michael patted his son's shoulder and laughed, "Looks like you'll be gaming all weekend." Tyler watched silently, his face showing a mixture of expectation and envy. Melissa held her son's hand and smiled encouragingly. She had prepared a different gift for Tyler, though it wasn't as flashy as a PS5. Next. Tyler. Eleanor picked up another large box. It was the same size as the PS5 box. A special gift from Grandma. Tyler's face lit up brightly. He rushed over to receive the box and gave Melissa a grateful look. Melissa smiled back, though confused. She hadn't heard about this present. Had her mother really bought Tyler a PS5? "Open it, Tyler," Brandon said. He had already opened his PS5 and begun setting it up. Tyler carefully unwrapped the paper. And indeed, there was a PlayStation 5 box. "Yes," he cheered. "Mom, look. Grandma got me a PS5. Melissa responded to her son's joy despite her confusion. "That's wonderful, Tyler. You should thank Grandma." "Thank you, Grandma." Tyler excitedly began opening the box. Eleanor smirked and looked at Carol and Michael. They wore similar smiles. Melissa felt uneasy and stared at her mother. Something was off. When Tyler opened the box, there was styrofoam padding inside. After removing it, there was nothing. Just an old phone card in a small envelope. Silence fell over the room. Tyler looked into the box with a confused expression, checking to see if he'd missed anything. Grandma, this. His voice trembled. Oh, Tyler, Eleanor put her hand to her mouth, pretending surprise. Did Santa mix up the boxes? And then she began to laugh. Carol and Michael joined in. Santa only comes to good children, Eleanor said through her laughter. Tyler, I heard you did poorly on tests at school this year, and your teacher called. Santa watches those things. Tears welled up in Tyler's eyes. His small shoulders shook, and he bit his lip hard to suppress his crying. In contrast, Brandon was happily spreading out his real ps5 on the floor, gleefully examining his new games. Don't cry now, Eleanor said coldly. This is a lesson. You'll have to try harder next year. Mom. Melissa said in a trembling voice. Her face was contorted with anger and sadness. What? It's a joke, just a joke, Eleanor waved her hand. Tyler will understand when he grows up. As the adults around him struggled to contain their laughter, Tyler's face turned bright red, and he suddenly stood up and ran out of the room. Tyler. Melissa followed her son. Down the hall, she heard the guest room door close. Melissa knocked on the door. Tyler, may I come in? A faint yes was heard. Melissa entered the room and found her son sitting on the bed, hugging his knees. There were tear stains on his cheeks. I'm sorry, Tyler, she sat beside her son and put her arm around him. What Grandma did was terrible. I had no idea this would happen. Am I a bad kid? Tyler asked in a small voice. Bad enough not to get a ps5. No, Melissa said firmly. You're a wonderful child. What Grandma did was wrong. You deserve any present. Tyler leaned against his mother and cried quietly. As Melissa held her son, she felt anger rising within her. This wasn't the first time her mother had been cruel, but to humiliate her young son so blatantly in front of others was unforgivable. After comforting her son for a while, Melissa quietly said, Rest here for a bit. I'll be right back. She left the guest room and went to her handbag. From the bag, she took out a small wrapped box. In fact, Melissa had a present for Eleanor. It was a gift she had chosen thoughtfully, hoping to improve their relationship. But now, her heart was filled with a different resolve. She took out another envelope from her bag and carefully slipped it into the box. Then, taking a deep breath, she returned to the living room. Upon entering, Eleanor, Carol, and Michael were calmly opening other presents. Brandon sat on the floor, already playing with his new ps5. Everyone pretended not to notice her return. Melissa stood directly in front of Eleanor and quietly offered the small box. Merry Christmas, Mom, she said in a calm voice. She was smiling, but her eyes were cold and determined. Eleanor looked at the box with surprise. A present for me. She took the box with curiosity. What could it be? Melissa didn't answer. She just silently watched her mother open the box. Eleanor untied the ribbon and carefully removed the wrapping paper. She opened the small white box and pulled out the envelope inside. She opened the envelope and froze completely when she saw its contents. From Eleanor's hand fell an application form for Golden Years Retreat, a retirement home. The form had all fields filled out, with only the signature line left blank. An attached note, in Melissa's neat handwriting, read, It seems Santa doesn't come for bad grandmothers either. The blood drained from Eleanor's face. Her eyes widened with an expression mixing fear and anger, and her hands trembled slightly. What is this? She said in a shaking voice. This joke isn't funny. The air in the living room froze. Carol and Michael looked at each other in confusion, and even Brandon looked up from his game. It's not a joke, Mom, Melissa said quietly. Her voice was low but clear. Your present to Tyler wasn't a joke either, was it? Eleanor clutched the papers and stood up. What do you think you're doing? Are you threatening me? It's not a threat. Just an option, Melissa replied, feigning calmness. He's 9 years old, Mom. How could you so easily embarrass and hurt a 9-year-old child in front of another child? It was educational. Eleanor raised her voice. Coddling will only cause problems for Tyler himself in the future. Educational. Anger flared in Melissa's eyes. You call humiliating a child in public educational? Or is it just that you only care about Carol and Brandon? Carol interjected, Melissa, calm down. Mother is only thinking about Tyler's best interests. Be quiet, Melissa said coldly to Carol. You were part of this plan too, weren't you? You truly don't understand what it means to trample on a child's heart. Eleanor waved the retirement home application with trembling hands and said, This is blackmail. Do you plan to put me in a place like this? Are you after my money? Money? Melissa gave a bitter smile. All I want is for Tyler to be loved by his grandmother. But if that's impossible, then it's better if we keep our distance. Distance? Eleanor's eyes widened. Yes, Melissa said with determination. If you hurt Tyler, I'll have to reconsider our relationship. I will never forgive what happened today. Melissa. Carol cried out. Mother is elderly. You're being unfilial. Unfilial? Melissa looked sharply at her sister. Isn't defending someone who hurts children the true definition of being unfilial? Michael stood up and said in a tense voice, Everyone, it's Christmas Eve. This is a family gathering, let's calm down. But Eleanor was trembling with anger. Get out. Get out of my house. Ungrateful daughter. Gladly, Melissa answered quietly. Tyler, we're leaving. Tyler, who had come out of the guest room, stood with his eyes red and swollen. Melissa took her son's hand and helped him put on his coat. Mom, Tyler said in a small voice, I don't like Grandma anymore. Melissa hugged her son. I understand. But it's okay. We'll have our own Christmas. As they headed toward the entrance, Eleanor shouted from behind, Tyler will never grow up to be like Brandon. Your foolish coddling is ruining that child. Melissa didn't look back. She quietly opened the door and let her son out into the snowy night. In the car, Tyler was crying softly as he gazed at the snowy landscape outside the window. Am I really a bad kid? Because I can't be like Brandon. Melissa pulled the car over to the curb and turned toward her son. Tyler, listen, she gently cradled his face in her hands. You are a wonderful child. What Grandma and Aunt Carol say is wrong. Of course you're different from Brandon. Everyone has different talents and personalities. But, the ps5. Santa does come to good children, Melissa smiled. The real Santa will come tonight. Believe me. Tyler showed a half-doubtful expression, but a faint light of hope returned to his eyes. When they arrived home, Richard's car was in the parking lot. He was standing beside his car, waiting for them in the snow. Dad! Tyler jumped out of the car and ran to his father. Richard lifted his son and spun him around. Hey, Tiger! Merry Christmas! He smiled at his ex-wife. You came back early. Melissa returned his smile with a tired face. It's a long story. The three entered the apartment. In the living room stood a small Christmas tree, with several presents arranged beneath it. Richard turned to his son. There's a special present from Santa. Mom and I prepared it together. He brought out a large box. Tyler looked at the box fearfully. Is this empty too? Open it and see, Melissa said gently. Tyler slowly peeled off the wrapping paper and opened the box. Inside was a real PlayStation 5 with the games he had wanted. Wow! Tyler's face lit up. It's real. A real PS5. Merry Christmas, Tyler, Richard said, stroking his son's hair. Mom and I talked it over and asked Santa to come early, specially. Tyler threw himself at his parents and hugged them tightly. Thank you, Mom. Thank you, Dad. Tell Santa thanks too. I will, Melissa laughed. As Richard began setting up the game console, Melissa made hot chocolate in the kitchen. Anger and sadness still lingered in her heart, but seeing her son's pure joy, she felt confident that her decision had been right. I don't want to go to Grandma's house, Tyler suddenly said. Never again. Melissa sat next to her son on the sofa and put an arm around his shoulders. I understand. You don't have to go for a while. I don't like Aunt Carol and Brandon either. We'll keep our distance from them too, Melissa answered quietly. We have our own family. Dad, and his new wife Jennifer, they all love you. Mom, I love you the most, Tyler leaned against his mother. Melissa kissed the top of her son's head. Her mobile phone vibrated, showing an incoming call from Carol. She ignored it and turned off the power. Tonight was Christmas for her small family, her son, and her ex-husband. Her relationship with her mother might be repaired, or it might not. But she didn't regret her decision to protect Tyler. As snow continued to fall quietly outside the window, watching Tyler smile, Melissa finally felt the true meaning of Christmas. It wasn't expensive presents or luxurious homes, but genuine love. On a day in March when spring sunshine began warming the streets of Boston, the phone rang in Melissa's office. She looked up from her insurance contract documents and was surprised to see the caller name, Eleanor Hamilton. There had been no contact since Christmas Eve. Hello? Melissa answered in a tense voice. Melissa, Eleanor's voice sounded weak, lacking its usual dignified tone. I was hoping we could talk. Melissa was surprised. Her mother's voice held a humility she had never heard before. What is it, Mom? I'd like to meet, Eleanor said. With Tyler too, if possible. Tyler is still. Melissa began, but Eleanor interrupted. I understand. It's natural that he doesn't want to see me. But I want to apologize. Melissa remained silent. It was the first time she had heard her mother utter words of apology. How about lunch tomorrow at Café Boston in Beacon Hill? Eleanor asked. As for Tyler, I'll leave that to your judgment. All right, Melissa replied. But promise me. If Tyler does come, will you respect him? I promise, there was sincerity in Eleanor's voice. The next day, Melissa entered the cafe with Tyler. Tyler looked nervous, gripping his mother's hand tightly. Eleanor was already seated by the window, and when she saw them, she tentatively waved. Hello, Tyler, Eleanor smiled gently at her grandson. Thank you for coming to see Grandma. Tyler nodded silently. Melissa placed a hand on her son's shoulder and sat across from Eleanor. Let me apologize first, Eleanor said. About Christmas Day, I'm truly sorry. Tyler, Grandma did a terrible thing. I won't ask for forgiveness, but I deeply regret it. Tyler silently stared at his grandmother. Melissa sensed a fragility in her mother's face that she had never seen before. Actually, Eleanor continued. Last month, I went to the doctor. I was diagnosed with mild dementia. Melissa caught her breath. Mom. Don't worry, Eleanor waved her hand. It's still early stages. But it made me reflect on my behavior. In fact, I looked into that retirement home brochure you gave me. I'm going for a tour next week. You're joking. Melissa said in surprise. I'm not joking, Eleanor replied with a serious expression. That Christmas showed me what I was about to lose. Family. Real family. Tyler gradually relaxed and quietly sipped his hot chocolate. Eleanor smiled gently at her grandson. "Are you enjoying the PS5?" she asked. "Yes," Tyler finally spoke. "Mom and Dad gave it to me." The conversation gradually became more natural, and Melissa was amazed by her mother's transformation. There was no mention of Carol's family. As they were leaving, Eleanor lightly grasped Melissa's arm. "May I see you again? I'd like to come watch Tyler's baseball games every Sunday." "I'll think about it," Melissa replied. There was still caution in her heart, but she couldn't deny the sincerity in her mother's eyes. Afterward, Melissa began inviting Eleanor to dinner once a month. It took time, but Tyler slowly began to rebuild trust in his grandmother. Meanwhile, relations with Carol's family remained cold. Carol had complained to a friend one day that Mother has grown weak, but as the bond between Eleanor and Melissa's family strengthened, she began to realize that she herself was becoming isolated. As the seasons changed from spring to summer, Melissa finally understood. Family isn't just about blood ties, but is built through mutual respect and love.